The only thing we have to
Beer.
is
Beer.
itself.
Beer. So many choices.
Only no function beer well without.
Woohoo! Beer! Hello and welcome to another episode of Beer Busters. We'll bring you the news and reviews of your favorite brews. I am Dan Baker. I'm joined by my co-host and brewologist,
Steph Hefner.
and of course the demented and fermented
Wayne Baker.
Oh man, this is going to be a fun episode. It is a Friday night as of recording. We're all having a little bit to drink. Since it is a Friday, it's the weekend. We can all let loose a little bit, and we're going to have a lot of fun talking to our guest who's joining us from Succession Fermentory. We have
Keith Hartwig, and I'm the co-owner and head brewer at Succession Fermentory in Cochranville, PA.
Cool, awesome. Keith, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, likewise.
Oh man, this is going to be such a great time. I know for sure. I can just feel it. So before we get too far into it, a little bit of housekeeping. Remember, you can follow along with all the fun. You know, you can follow us on things like Instagram or Twitter or TikTok or Threads. We are at Beer Busters. On Facebook, we are Beer Busters Podcast. Don't forget to go to beerbusterspodcast.com. You can also do that, but then add /shop to the URL and get some cool merch that Wayne designed. On YouTube, you can check out some cool videos that we've done. We are Beer Busters Podcast on there. And, of course, there's patreon.com or the app /beerbusters, where as little as $1 a month will get you access to all the cool behind-the-scenes stuff, the punishment videos from back in the day, and so many more goodies for as little as $1 a month.
I think the archive of punishment videos is worth the price of admission alone to become a patron.
Agree.
Even if you stop your support after you watch all the videos, that's fine. I mean, I think it's worth it just to watch those. The punishment videos are great. Also, I really love Threads. I hope it sticks around.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like it so far.
I'm enjoying it so far. So,
A certain one of my co-hosts does not interact with me very much on Threads, though. One of them does. One of them does not. I'll let you decide who.
I'm going to guess it's me that doesn't.
well, the other cool thing about Threads is because it's so new, you can comment on something from a major account, and you're the third comment because there's not a lot of people around. I mean, there's people, but it's still growing. So that's kind of cool. That's an experience we haven't had for quite a while.
Yeah, that is
on the
true.
internet, I feel like.
So follow along at Beer Busters.
I definitely find it's a place that you can post more informal silliness or nonsense.
Absolutely.
And it's an okay place to do that. So I'm enjoying it. We'll see.
Yeah. Same here.
Definitely.
Same here. What are we all drinking? I have a Vienna Lager from Workhorse. I was cleaning out my fridge, and I found one of these tucked away in the back that I forgot about, and I'm very happy that I found it. Steph, what do you have?
Well, I understood the assignment, so I'm drinking a Succession beer. I'm drinking Gaudium, which is their farmhouse ale, brewed with a bunch of fun things. I should let the person that made this loveliness in the can. Keith, can you tell us a little bit about Gaudium?
Yeah, absolutely. So Caroline who is our lead artist, she does most of the artwork for our can and various other kind of elements. Her and her new husband, Dylan Eberly, who is a very good longtime friend of mine from when I was a home brewer up in Boston. They've both been very close to the brewery from the start, and after we, finally got off the ground, we invited them down to do a collaboration brew with us. Dylan brought a very cool yeast that he had propagated after getting permission from a brewer who, he had gone to visit on one of his many beer travels. He brought it back to the States. We had it propagated at a lab, so we fermented with that. And then we allowed them to kind of design the recipe around things that we were growing on our farm. So that included ginger and coriander, as well as trifoliate orange, which we had foraged locally. And we put all that into the cool ship. And so it has a little bit of a kind of wild character to it, as well as, we fermented it with a very special yeast strain from one of Dylan's favorite breweries. And that's the beer.
What is a trifoliate orange?
Yeah, so it's an introduced species of orange that used to be planted as like a hedgerow uh, species because it has really long thorns, like a lot of citrus does. Um, it has like since its introduction kind of escaped cultivation and can be found, kind of growing in woods and various like kind of abandoned lots and around farm properties. They're really small oranges. They have a kind of thick pith. They're not super juicy. They're very seedy, but they have been used to make things like marmalades and jams traditionally. But they have a really incredible kind of floral fragrance, very uh, rose and citrus flower like. So yeah, they're very cool as a kind of flavor uh, in the beer. And we added it to the cool ship, which allowed it to kind of get a more robust extraction of the flavor because it's going through all those temperature gradients from kind of near boiling down to pitch temperatures in the like mid 60s.
Sorry, Wayne. We didn't get to hear what you were drinking.
I just didn't know if anyone was still interested because it's not very exciting. But so I'm drinking from Yards their retro pixelated series of IPAs they did. Not usually an IPA guy. Drinking the Very Mega. It's an Imperial IPA, but these are actually left over from the night of my wedding. I've been sitting in my fridge for like the past 3 months. And I actually had one of these the other day because a lot of them are hazy. So I saved them for my wife because she likes hazy IPAs. I do not. But I had one of these the other night and I actually kind of liked it. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna keep drinking this. So there you go. Very Mega Imperial IPA.
Very nice.
Cool. Keith, what are you drinking? You drinking anything?
Nothing yet.
Okay.
I figured at some point maybe we'd pause and I would grab something.
Yeah, definitely. Well, whenever you feel the need, just say the word. That's the beauty.
Or
of doing
just get up and go.
Or just get up and do it. Like, we'll take the hint. It's fine.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Before we go a little deeper, I want to bring something back from a while ago, because there's news to be talked about.
Wait, we have a news segment?
I know.
We haven't had news in a while.
I thought of this like right before we started recording. So I'm sure we've all heard the news recently about Anchor. Mm-hmm. It is very sad that they've announced they're going to cease operations, but that might not actually be the end of the story, because the workers are trying to save the 127-year-old institution. I didn't realize it was 127 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oldest craft brewery in the nation.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a chance for it because the unionized workers, they've launched a bid to buy the brewery and to run it as a co-op, which I think is a really cool idea for them to do if they've all banded together and they want to do it. Sam Singer, who's a spokesperson for the company, told the Washington Post on Thursday that the union of about 40 workers had sent a letter of interest to the company. They say they're not looking for a handout or charity. All we want is a fair shot at being able to continue to do our jobs, make the beer we love, and keep this historic institution open. I also don't know if I realized that Anchor was owned, or I guess still technically is owned, by another company, Sapporo Holdings. I don't know if I realized that, or maybe if I did, I forgot. But over the past few years since the ownership, I guess it's kind of waned a little bit, but they're saying that now it's the time to put everybody's love of the brand to the test, according to the Anchor Union, asking for public support. So they say, let's work this out together and bring back what we've almost lost. And I think this is such a cool idea. Has this ever happened to another brewery that we know of?
I think it's happened in other sectors. I've never heard of it happening in a brewery. I know like Redner's.
Yeah, they're
operates kind of like a co-op.
Yeah.
The market in like the Reading area, where we're all originally from. But yeah, I don't know of any other brewery that's like, at least not employee owned in response to like the brewery potentially being sold off. I don't know.
Well, we recorded with a co-op.
The Kings County.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
KCBC.
But was that designed as a co-op, or did that become a co-op after something?
If only there was a podcast episode we could listen to learn all that. No, I don't think we didn't actually spend we only spent part of the episode talking to them. That was the episode we recorded with
the guy from Beer Menus, Gage.
Yes.
The
Beer Menus people. And they just hopped on for a minute. But I think that was the original premise of the breweries. If you look at the price tag of what when they were trying to sell Anchor before they decided to close it, it's a really big price tag. So this is very like hopeful, and it would be awesome because that brand is really nostalgic for most craft beer drinkers. But in my mind, I'm trying to process how it would even possibly happen.
How much were they asking for it?
I don't know.
I don't remember
tens
seeing
of millions of dollars.
I mean, I would imagine a brand like this has the clout to try to get that much money, but I mean, I don't know. It's going to be curious to see how it goes. Do they get investors?
Maybe as someone that actually owns a brewery, maybe you have a little more intelligent insight into something like this. Do you think this is actually possible that they could do this?
Their brewery's at a considerably larger scale than
just
ours.
A little bit.
And with them having been owned by Sapporo Holdings, we're talking like a completely different ballgame. So I don't know. It sounds really interesting. I think the idea of a cooperative run brewery is really fascinating and could open up a lot of doors in terms of like creativity and maybe pushing back against what has become a lot of the kind of like trendy models in the brewing industry. A lot of the kind of venture capital backed breweries that have popped up over the last decade. So,
and it would be interesting because if they are successful in buying, I guess they would have to essentially buy it as a collective. That would then give that unique setup access to not only a large brand name, but a distribution network. And like you said, like maybe bucking some of the more unfortunate trends, on the business side that have been going on, having a brewery at national scale and with that sort of name recognition, being employee owned, could have some effect that way. I don't know. It sounds like a long shot to me, but it would be cool if it happened.
Yeah. I kind of get vibes at the same time. And I know it's still slightly different when Pearl Jam tried to take on Ticketmaster. I mean, it's Pearl Jam. They have the recognition, and, it didn't necessarily work out for them, and you still have to go through Ticketmaster and Live Nation to see them. I want this to work out for this union, but if it's only 40 people, yeah, sure, they might get investors involved, but that's a big undertaking. And if they're looking for tens of millions, I mean, there might not just be they might not have the money to do it. But if you're in San Francisco, you have all those venture capitalists that are there. I'm sure somebody's going to be willing to put money into this, but at that point, is it truly a co-op if you have investors?
So Sapporo, the Japanese company that bought them in 2017. And I read an article earlier this week that said that one of their goals was to have their Japanese lager brewed in that facility. And it didn't quite go as planned. And I believe they also purchased the Stone facility in Richmond. And I think the plan is to brew that Japanese lager there. But they had Sapporo tried to sell off Anchor, and there were no bidders, obviously, and so they just sold it.
That's
or
a
closed
shame.
it.
Yeah, I wonder why the lack of interest. I mean, it's such a well-known brand. Is it just like not sustainable? Has the beer industry changed so much that these like legacy giant breweries just don't fit the market anymore?
I mean, that could be. There's a daily podcast I listen to that's like a business headline podcast. And they've talked about the beer industry, I think, more in the past few months than the entire time I've listened to them. But they've had good points. They've looked at the markets and they've run the numbers, and beer sales are on the decline. Like factually, statistically, they are on the decline. So unless there was some non-beer alcoholic beverage that was in the pipeline for them, it might not be worth it for anybody to spend the money on.
They paid $85 million for it in 2017.
Wow, $85 million, and they can't get anything for it 6 years later.
Yeah, I just feel like it's got to be like an interesting commentary on the state of the beer industry if a brand like Anchor is up for sale and no one's interested,
Jeez. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. This is a story I want to keep following, because if it works, man, that'll be great. But I don't know. I guess time will tell.
But then when was the last time you drank an Anchor beer?
Probably with you, their Christmas.
Yep.
I mean, honestly.
That's the thing. I tend to go local. I stick to beers that I can go to the brewery and get the beer.
There you go. That partly answers your question.
Yeah, and
then.
that's true.
Yeah.
And that's another sign of the times with the industry itself, which is why I like that places like Succession are, out in the field now, because now you have a destination to go to get some cool, unique beers. So I think that is the future of it all, and I really think that's going to be the cool way to do it, because you can shoot for the expansion and take it over the world, but if you're not serving the local community, that's going to be a big disservice to yourself and the community. But kind of on that note, Succession. So you guys have been around for 2 years now. I saw, right? Almost 2 years.
Not quite. So I think James told this story a little bit when he was interviewing with you guys about like the sequencing of events leading up to the actual opening, right? You register your business 1 year, and then it takes a year to actually open the brewery and get your license, and then you have your license, and you've been maybe brewing surreptitiously prior to having that, and then you're brewing legally after that, and then you finally have enough beer that you can have a grand opening. So really, we were licensed July of last year, so 1 full year since receiving the LCB license. October is when we held of last year is when we held our grand opening event. We had some mature beers that we were excited to finally share at that point with a small number of people. We weren't quite in a position where we had a volume of matured blended beers ready to share kind of on the market, but we could share them with a small kind of gathering of like 100 people out at our farm, which was really fun. And then, since then, we've been building up an inventory of beers that are, maturing in oak barrels and in our Solera system, and kind of sprinkling those things out over time as we are also releasing beers that can be produced on a kind of faster track than that.
So happy anniversary on the license. That's cool.
Yeah. We'll officially celebrate 1 year in October, just to kind of make sense of the fact that we had a grand opening.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have some plans in the works, but we haven't announced anything yet, because we're still kind of looking for a venue that's going to be large enough to host said 1 year anniversary.
Yeah.
Our farm is small. It's Stella Lou Farm. We rent from some very dear friends of ours. It is a family farm. There's 4 generations of people living there. So it's very much like an intimate, close space, and we tend not to have events that exceed a certain number of people, just so that we're not becoming a kind of undue burden on the family that's there, but also because we want it to be a special experience when you're out there. So us actually being able to like spend time with you when you're there and walk you around the property and show you the goats and the chickens and the ducks and the garden and the orchard, right? And the apiary, of course, which is a big part of our kind of identity as a brewery. So, that's all still in the works. We'll hopefully be making an announcement in the next month or so about what venues and what dates we'll be doing some fun partying.
You mentioned earlier when we were talking about this beer, you said foraging, which I know is a big part of your brand and the brewery. Are there a lot of ingredients that are grown on the farm that you use in the beers?
Yeah, and stuff that we're working on too, right? Like, as most people who kind of get into the industry of whether it's winemaking or cider making or any kind of fermentation, there's usually a kind of time scale and commitment to growing things for your own production that can be anywhere from like 1 season up to 5 years, 8 years before you see like the kind of results of what you're growing. So right now we have a lot of herbs that we're growing on the farm, things like chamomile and yarrow. We grow our own rhubarb, which is in the strawberry rhubarb Berliner Weiss that we released a few weeks ago. We have currants on the farm, which we're very excited to be using for the first time this year. We have American plums, which is the wild native plum to this region. And then, we've been working with the farm owners over the last year to kind of identify what things we want to grow more of, what things don't do well in our bioregion because of various like disease pressures, and we do everything organically. So we don't put any pesticides or sprays on stuff. So that inherently kind of limits what we can grow well on the farm. So for example, we culled all the peaches out of the farm this year because they're just fungus magnets. And it's very hard to grow them without using all sorts of pesticide, fungicide sprays. So it's we grow our own ginger. That's been very exciting. We still have bags of ginger frozen from last season. We've tried our hand at turmeric, which we've done small amounts of. We have some that we're going to be putting into a saison this fall. We did a Flanders Red that we brewed last fall after our pumpkin harvest on the farm. So we used, I think it was like 50 pounds or more of pumpkins from the farm, and then another 50 pounds of butternut squash from a neighboring farm. Sweet potatoes, we're going to do something with. We did a sweet potato pale ale just as a kind of pilot batch last fall. We really loved it. So we're going to do it again this year at a larger scale. So yeah, things are we're always kind of adapting, trying to figure out what does well, what we can grow at a sufficient scale to do anywhere from like a 2-barrel batch up to a 7-barrel batch with. Certain ingredients are really nice because you don't need a lot of them. For example, currants have a very potent flavor and aroma. So we don't need like rows and rows and rows of currants. We can actually get away with like a small number of plants and still be able to do like a 5-barrel batch with it. Whereas something like strawberries, you're talking like 400 to 500 pounds of berries for a 5 to 7-barrel batch. It's just at the scale of our farm doesn't really make sense, but that's why we partner with local farms in our area.
So that's sort of the range.
Strawberry. I just have to say that strawberry rhubarb Berliner was amazing. I like a Berliner, but it's usually not my go-to. But when we were up at Fawn Hill, the last beer garden, Dana got that and I started drinking it, and then I got myself one. It's so drinkable and so delightful.
Cool.
That beer was really tasty.
That's great to hear. The strawberry season this year was a bit weird because of the drought. There was just a lower crop yield for berries. But the berries that we did get were extremely fragrant and flavorful because everything was so concentrated. But we ended up needing twice as much as we thought we needed. So we kind of had to adjust at the very last minute. Next year we'll know better, And the other thing is like, having brewed, on like 1/2-barrel and 1-barrel pilot systems with various breweries in the past, things don't always scale linearly, right? So like your ratios of things at a smaller batch scale, especially like a homebrew scale, homebrew does not translate at all to like hundreds of gallons of wort. So that's been something really interesting to kind of figure out and tweak. And luckily we have we're surrounded by a really amazing community of people who has been able to help us work through and troubleshoot those issues.
So that's kind of the range you're at as far as production, at like 5 to 7 barrel range for your beers. Now, is that a limitation of, sort of this the size of the brewery you want it to be, or is that a limitation imposed by the fact that you're growing a lot of your own ingredients?
A little of both, I guess. We do brew even smaller batches. So, sometimes we're like, we know that we only want to do 60 gallons of this to fill this single special barrel, right? Like we might have like an Amorosa sherry barrel. And and we don't want to do a full scale batch, so we'll do like a 2.5 to 3 barrel batch specifically for that. Our maximum capacity at the farmhouse is five barrels, and although we could double batch, our cool ship was built custom sized to the brewery, to the brew house. I think also the scale of the space that we're at, we don't have room for a lot of like extra equipment. So while we could have probably built a 10-barrel cool ship, it wouldn't fit in our space. So double batching wasn't really an option. So the way that we typically kind of double a recipe is just to do 2 consecutive brew days. Fill the cool ship once, pump it out, start the next brew, fill the cool ship, and blend into the fermentation vessels. So
Cool.
I feel like you need to put a truck on the property and put a cool ship.
yeah, I've heard this one done before.
I hear it works really well.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious what your background in is brewing, what kind of brought you to opening a brewery, but also specifically a farmhouse brewery and going down that specific sort of very unique path of brewing beer.
All right, I'll try to keep this succinct. I have a hard time telling my own story. I think a lot of us probably have that challenge. So my background is in art and architecture, but over like the last probably 6 or 7 years, I've been involved in what's called community engaged art practices. So basically working directly with communities to develop projects centered on issues that affect that community. My own passion kind of led me to seek out projects that specifically had to do with community-led agriculture and kind of climate issues, whether it's social justice issues around climate change and its effect on communities, or food access and food equity issues. I spent several years kind of embedded in various communities up in Boston when we lived there, doing this kind of work. A lot of it's it's art practices, but a lot of it's also kind of advocacy work too, building a lot of connections between things like community gardens and community farms and food banks and art institutions and other institutions that can provide public resources, schools. So I did a lot of work with youth in that time, and kind of parallel to all of that, I've had a long interest in fermentation and food preservation and cultivation and like gardening and all of these things that has again kind of developed in parallel to that. Been homebrewing for about probably 10 or 11 years, and in the last few years had some opportunities to brew at scale with places in Boston like Aeronaut Brewing Company. I did a lot of work with their head kind of scientist there at the time, doing some really cool stuff with like kvass and some unusual fermentations. And at some point I just realized like a brewery seemed like a really cool platform to continue to explore a lot of the things that interest me, to create a space for community, to create a platform and a business that could potentially give back to communities or support sustainable agriculture. But I also wanted to have like a very direct role in a lot of that. So to me, it didn't make sense to just kind of have a brewery in an industrial space in a city, as great as that is from like a lot of logistical perspectives. I wanted to be planted somewhere where I could actually go out and, pick the ingredients right from the farm or grow things or forage in the landscape. And I was really inspired by Scratch Brewing Company out of Ava, Illinois, which I'm actually surprised more people don't know about this brewery. Just considering how influential I think that they've been to a lot of a lot of like recent breweries that have followed in this model of like becoming like a true farmhouse brewery or working with like sustainable, locally sourced ingredients. So anyways, that was kind of like the path to what I wanted to do. And then the pandemic happened. We were living in Boston. My partner, well, the guy who I was kind of working with in partnership to open a brewery at the time, we both just decided, obviously, it was a terrible time to do that. And then my wife,
surprisingly,
and I,
not everyone made that decision, though.
well, yeah. Then my wife and I made the difficult decision of moving to be closer to family, but to kind of unfortunately leave the community that we were so deeply invested in the Boston area. And when we were looking around for places to move to, my wife's family is from like Wilmington and Newark area of Delaware. My family lives out in Western Pennsylvania. And, we just kind of like did some math and triangulated, and we were like, and, we have roots in Philadelphia. We lived there for like over a decade before we moved to Boston. And we just basically like did a little triangulation. We're like, this kind of looks like a cool area. What do we know about it? Absolutely nothing. Southern Chester County, never really been there. Oh, Kennett Square. That's cool. We've been there once. So, we felt like it was this nice balance of, being close enough to urban areas that we could still have our kind of community and social connections, as well as our professional connections. But it was far enough away from a city, which at that point, having been through what was going on in Boston during the pandemic, was just like, I don't want to live in a city right now. This is terrifying. And, so we wound up in Avondale, Pennsylvania, in the heart of mushroom farming country. We're about 15 minutes from Kennett Square, and we moved here. Things were just over the last 6 months of the pandemic, as things were starting to ease up, we started reaching out and trying to get to know people in the community here who had kind of similar interests and values to us. And through a kind of chain of people that we met, we ended up meeting the family at Stella Lou Farm. And I, through just like conversations, it came out that I wanted to open a farmhouse brewery. They had a farm. They had a facility at the farm that they had at one point started to turn into a meadery. They have a big apiary at the farm. But it was a little more than they could handle. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and they just decided to kind of put the hold on that. And they were basically like, we love your idea for a brewery. We love your kind of values and interests. We think this would be a really good fit. If you think this could work and be a good space for you guys, then, let's work something out. So that's where we're at. And I brought my first business partner, Justin Kerber, on at that time, who's a chef up in the Philadelphia area. And then very shortly after, we brought on Benjamin Devon, who is our other partner, who has a background in kind of wine education, and also a food industry person. And yeah, we all had kind of, similar values and interests, and thought this was a really cool opportunity to do something together. And yeah, so that's where we are.
Very cool. So you're set up with the farm there. Do you just like rent a portion of the land and just cultivate yourself, or do you work in conjunction with the farm owners, with the actual farm?
We call ourselves a joint venture.
Okay.
So we are invested in what they're doing, and they're invested in what we're doing.
Right.
And there's just a lot of kind of reciprocity in what's happening there. So, for example, they have a pretty sizable beekeeping operation. We buy a lot of their honey. We sell their honey at farmers markets for them. We use our farmers market kind of platform to help support what the farm is doing. We work with them on, hey, we want a lot of chamomile this year. Okay, cool. Let's grow a bunch of chamomile, rhubarb, whatever it is. So, yeah. We do.
So-
We also support their farm education workshops. So I'm actually a member of the farm's organization, which is the School of Living, which is a land trust organization, and they have um, a large component of what that organization does is around land stewardship education. So we kind of co-authored and ran a series of workshops this year at the farm, beekeeping, pollinator gardening, practical foraging, tree grafting, farmhouse brewing. So we do a lot of, hands-on education-based workshops at the farm, which is, very cool because we get to bring in all the people that we're already working with into that space, and then they get to share with the broader community what we're all about.
This might be a dumb question, but what is practical foraging?
So foraging for things that you can eat,
okay.
that are safe to consume, that maybe have some medicinal properties, but not foraging as like an act of collecting specimens, for your own kind of collection of natural objects or organisms, which could be another reason you might forage.
I should have been able to piece that together. That makes complete and total sense. Sorry. So I
just can't stop thinking about like a braggot has to be in your future, right? I mean, with the apiary there.
Yeah, we're actually. You're giving it too much. No, kidding. Yeah, we have a couple meads and braggots in the works right now.
Okay.
They require some pretty serious maturation times to like get to that very drinkable, balanced spot, especially because some of the ones that we want to do are spontaneously fermented. So they'll be,
of course,
years and years before we're ready to like release them.
A future anniversary release, perhaps.
There you go.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested in. I'm noticing, because we've had a lot of, I think, guests on recently where we focused a lot on agriculture, and its place in the brewing process, and it's interesting to see like someone coming from a background, focused on art and also like agriculture and climate and its impact on social issues, how that kind of led to a fascination with fermentation in general rather than specifically beer making, and also how like I think as having a background in art leads you more towards like wild and spontaneous fermentation more so than the more like strict. Is that true? Do you feel like that's like what sort of had you gravitate to that specific parts of the brewing world, the spontaneous fermentation and the sort of like it's focused on agriculture?
It's a bit like the spontaneous fermentation and the wild fermentation is a big part of what we do, but it's not exclusively what we do, right? I would say exclusively what we do is beers with locally sourced ingredients that are really kind of designed to showcase the kind of flavors, qualities, textures of the place where we are living. But I love the artistry of spontaneous and blended beers. I love that, I'm also enamored with the kind of technical processes of brewing and the science of brewing, as I think many people in this industry are. But what I really love is sitting down with, 12 2-ounce pours out of 12 different barrels and going down the line and kind of doing a sensory evaluation and figuring out like, blending ratios, which is usually, it's based on palate and preference and kind of a subjective quality. It's not, because each of those brews may have been brewed to a certain specification, but then are allowed to evolve in relationship to the space around them and the vessel that they're inside of, and the microorganisms that kind of are involved in the transformation of that beer. You can brew it to spec and wind up with something radically different. Whereas, if you've done everything right, for example, with a lager beer, and you follow those specifications very closely and, you've been very precise and you've followed good kind of cleanliness practices, you should, in theory, get the thing that you expected out the other side, right? Whereas with this other kind of approach to brewing, there's just a lot more variation and unknowns, which, yeah, it's a, I guess, thinking about it, I think both are forms of art. It's just like it's two different techniques to arrive at the finished artwork.
I feel like there's such an elegant story behind every. I don't even want to say every beer, but almost like every moment of this process for you. Like you talk so elegantly and passionately about it. I don't know. I just enjoy listening to you talk about the process.
Thank you.
I mean, there clearly had to have been passion behind it for you to make such a drastic move, not only in career, but in location as well. And that's,
Yeah, I haven't made the career move fully. I'm still doing two things right now. I still work full time for the design studio that I work for, as well as brew and market and sell and do all these other things. But yeah, if there wasn't a real passion and interest for it, I wouldn't be doing it, because it would just burn you out,
Right.
But
now, right now, the Cochranville location, you don't have a tap room that's open to the public right now, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we only do like private special events on site. Again, that goes back to a lot of the things around, it's a family-owned farm, and just like the intimacy of the space and the kind of sacredness of the space in a lot of ways to us and to the family who lives there. But we are in the process of finding a tap room and have been meeting with landlords and going through some preliminary planning phases. I don't know if you saw, we did a really cool pop-up in Philadelphia not that long ago at the Man Full of Trouble Tavern.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just like looking at various spaces, trying things out, see how they fit. Our biggest concern is making sure that same special experience that you get when you come out at the farm and you're watching the ducks go back into their house at sunset, and just so peaceful, that we can try to encapsulate some of that experience wherever we are, or we can shape the space in such a way that we can produce that experience. So
are you looking at in particular locations, or it sounds more like the space is going to be more important than the final destination?
We are trying to find somewhere local enough to the farm that connection is really apparent,
mm-hmm.
And that we can serve our local community really well. But we are also looking at a location in Philadelphia that would be much smaller, and a little bit more kind of selective in terms of our menu, like kind of limited offerings, maybe reduced hours, feel a little bit more, again, trying to like maintain that special experience. Like you walk in and you can actually get to talk to like one of the owners, or be surrounded by like various like, artifacts and imagery from our brewing process, images of the farm. We just want to try to embed that quality into whatever space. And, we've looked at some spaces that are like, oh yeah, if we had, $500,000 and we're a brewery putting out 30 barrels a year, or 30 barrels a brew, and like, thousands of barrels a year, that'd be great. But that's not us. And they all have a kind of like industrial or kind of modern aesthetic to them. They're a little too sleek and shiny. And I don't know. They don't fit our vibe as well.
Mm-hmm. There is a. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say there is a specific like urban brewery sort of aesthetic that like is just easy to find, but it doesn't really fit the the farmhouse vibe. So yeah, I imagine it's tough to find a space that fits.
Yeah. And like we're not in a hurry per se to find that space. We're we're doing pretty well at the scale that we're operating at, and through our farmers markets and beer gardens and kind of like other direct to customer sales. So yeah.
I'm fully supportive of the current model because you guys do the beer garden twice a month, second and fourth Saturday at Fawn Hill Hop Yard, which is in Shillington, Pennsylvania, super close to where I'm at. I love it. It's a beautiful location. And
Oh yeah.
So I
We
love, I
plan we
love.
plan to stay there for a long time. I mean,
Okay,
like,
good. I'm really glad to
yeah.
hear that.
No, like we're already talking about next year with them, right? Like Destiny and Jeff, maybe your podcast listeners don't know who that is, but Fawn Hill Hop Yard is one of two hop growers in Pennsylvania that we work with very closely. We buy a lot of their hops. We love the quality of their products. We love their values. We love their kind of philosophy and approach to farming. Again, organic, sustainable, only growing things that make sense to grow in our bioregion, so that they don't need to use, toxic pesticides. And anyway, so we're talking about next year and like how many times a month we're going to be there. We're planning some special events for this fall and winter. It's a very special place, and we feel like, a big part of what we're trying to do is foster and build community between both the people who are growing ingredients for us, as well as the people that those growers, the community that they serve directly. And yeah, so we'll be there, even after we find a tap room. No question about it.
That makes my heart happy. So you guys have to come up my way and visit one of these Saturdays, and you can check out. The Hop Yard is just such a peaceful place. It's not far off of 222, but you feel like you're like in the middle of nowhere when you're sitting at one of their picnic tables and just looking at the Hop Yard. And oftentimes there's deer around the place, and
I'm getting
running around. They're adorable puppy
French
animals.
Creek Organics.
That's
vibe.
who
Remember
it was.
that
I was
from
trying
way
to
back?
think of who it was because we recorded there and we were in
Such a
that
beautiful
barn
place.
looking out. Oh, that was great.
That was a great episode.
Yeah, that was probably one of the
Be there.
most beautiful recordings we ever did.
So
Well,
chill.
that's all right. We can stop this and redo it.
yeah. We'll see what happens. Is there's a pandemic happening. We got used to doing this across a screen.
Yeah.
Now, we're not sitting in the beautiful hop yards anymore.
Right.
Yeah, it is nice that none of us needs to do any sort of excessive driving, but man, it makes you. I do miss especially moments like that. But
Yeah.
But I never like. It's so obvious, but it's also so perfect to think about serving the beer on the farm where one or more of the ingredients was grown. Like what a beautiful romantic sentiment.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like that's what we really enjoy being there because of that direct connection, right? We can be like, and I say it all the time to people. I mean, it probably becomes cliche at a certain point, but I'm like, that the hops that are in that beer were grown up there on that hill. It's like, it's very funny. But it's also true, and it's very cool, especially right now. So the hop cones are, almost at like time that they're ready to pick. They're starting to like release the lupulin powder, or and so people can go up and actually rub the cones and smell them while they're drinking a beer that has those hops in it, right? It's the one-to-one connection couldn't be stronger. And similarly, when we have people out at our farm and we're like serving a beer that we have spice bush berries in, and we can walk them down to the little grove of trees where the spice bush grows, and they can pick the leaves right off or the berries right off the plant. It's a really kind of rich sensory experience for people, and one that you probably you don't get as often as you might want when it comes to food and beverage. I think there's a lot of people who are very curious about these things and curious about ingredients and how they're grown and where they're grown. And how things are produced. And, you know, I've been on many brewery tours, but like at a certain point, it's just all the same, right?
Mm.
It's just like, and this is where we mash, and this, and it's like, you know, and they all kind of smell the same because they're usually like big industrial breweries, and so it is definitely very fun when you go to a place like, for example, the Referend or Plan B, where you're there and you're surrounded by the things that have gone into the making of that beer, and the process is like on full display, and it's totally different than the kind of industrial process that you're used to seeing. Um,
Yeah, I think it's also
Yeah.
like it helps you appreciate the product more. You know, specifically when you were saying about drinking the beer and then like smelling the hops right there that are in that beer. It's also very educational. I found that every time we've gone somewhere where like the production process or something is like right there in front of you for you to see and smell and touch and taste, it not only makes you appreciate the product more, but it just like helps you understand the process more. And I think like too many people just don't know where their food comes from. You know, they
Yeah.
just don't know. And like having that connection it's nice, but it's also like educational as well, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
We stayed at a bed and breakfast in Chicago last month, and some of the ingredients that were part of the breakfast, they were growing those, you know, some fruits and herbs and things on the rooftop garden. So red currants were something that they often put on the plate. And then we actually, the one day, went up to the deck and, you know, saw where the red currants were grown and picking them off the bush and eating them. And, you know, just anytime I think you can make a connection and almost remind yourself, like, this is where my food comes from, or even this is where the idea for this dish came from, or the inspiration. Like it just takes it to a whole nother level, and with a special appreciation. And you know,
Yeah.
just even appreciating fresh food and fresh, and you know, because we're in a world with so much fast food and processed food, and you know, things that are easy to cook and make or to get. And you know, just taking it back to those ingredients and how amazing they are. I mean, you were talking about the strawberries this year, and my mouth was salivating. You know, we're lucky enough to have a farm stand literally, you know, a walking distance from our home. And I will only eat strawberries when they're in season and fresh, because no other strawberry in a grocery store, frozen or fresh or whatever, is going to give you that experience that you have when you have a fresh, locally grown strawberry. It's just,
Yeah.
you appreciate it more.
Yeah. Especially when you're eating a strawberry in like January from the grocery store.
Oh,
Like,
do
Yeah.
they even have a flavor?
Everything's different, right? They're not the same. But getting back to the educational comment that you made, you know, I think I was just talking to Alan Gladish of Double Eagle Malt. We sometimes call and just nerd out about farming stuff. But you know, we're talking about how beer and food are like, obviously they're agricultural products, right? But because of our industrial food system, and you know, I include big beer in that, we're so disconnected from the agricultural side of that, and therefore we're also very disconnected from the ecological and climate side of that as well, right? We don't see that kind of interaction between the farming and the landscape that farming is happening on, and the downstream effects of, you know, using pesticides, and how that affects, you know, the water supply or the soil, and how that affects the creatures that live in those environments, right? Everything is just like, we've just cut that connection off so cleanly, and we've obfuscated it as much as we possibly can. So when you go to a place like the restaurant you're talking about, right, and you can go up on the roof deck and you can actually eat the ingredients that were also in your meal, I think there's also something really special about that, in that you're also there with the people who grew those things, who know those things, right? They know about that plant. They know about that plant's relationship to the soil, to the kind of natural environment around it. They know about its needs. They know probably way more about its benefits to you from like a nutritional and health perspective than, someone who's cooking with things that are coming from U.S. food or, ConAgra or whatever, right? Like when you grow the food that you're cooking with or serving to people, you just know a lot more about it. Therefore, you can make a lot more informed decisions about how to use it, and again, how to kind of treat the landscape in respect to those things that you're growing. You're less likely, I think, to make poor decisions about, either just like the use of an ingredient, right? Like how can you like tease out its best qualities if you don't really know it that well? Or, do something that potentially mucks up the environment around it and makes it harder for you to grow it in the future. Now, that's obviously all that to say that clearly we've done some horrible things in agriculture, despite the fact that people are growing things. But even the growers themselves that are working on these huge industrial farms, their relationship to the plant and the landscape has been also very distanced because of the technologies and stuff that they're using to grow. So
that's a really good point about it. It's the people who grew it and they're the most familiar with it. And we just recorded an episode with Ben from Plowman, and it hasn't aired yet. And the passion he had for apples was palpable.
It was
amazing.
I learned so much about apples.
Yeah,
I
never knew I wanted to know that much about apples, but here I am, and I know about apples now, and I know that cider apples are specifically just for cider because they don't work in anything else. And like I know some of the reasoning behind that now. And that's really cool. It's maybe it's because I enjoy little tidbits of trivia here and there, but it's really cool to find somebody as passionate as they are about that kind of stuff, to learn about that and its uses and the whole ecosystem of it all too. Like there's a lot to be said for the knowledge behind it. Steph, you even say at one point, and I don't know if this is still one of the coolest beer experiences that you had, and I'm sorry for bringing them up, but when you went to the Budweiser brewery, even though, yes, that's not the same as local farms and everything. It's just you got to get the knowledge of the product that everybody knew about, but nobody thinks about where it comes from. So I think the knowledge on any scale is going to help you appreciate whatever it is you're eating, drinking, smelling, touching, tasting, whatever.
Well, and how many breweries have their own kilns in the freaking brewery?
Well.
Like that was like crazy. But this also makes me think about our history as a nation. I mean, if you think back to the time of the American Revolution, what was it like? 90% of Americans were farmers.
Yeah.
I mean, and in the short history of our
by
country,
necessity mostly.
Well, yeah, by necessity, of course. But, the relationship with the land and the food that we were eating and the animals that we were raising, and our relationship it's so disconnected now.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 6 tomato plants and 7 pepper plants, and I have an herb garden that desperately needs my attention, and we have a lime tree and a lemon tree. We try to grow some ingredients, and it's amazing when you can use your own ingredients, but we have become so disconnected from our land, and that's probably why our land is in a state of emergency, I mean, our planet as a whole and climate, but just the way we're treating our land and animals, and we're trying to be more efficient in order to feed people, but I don't know, my brain there's just so many things going on right now, and well, not certainly an hour and a half podcast is not long enough,
of course not,
to delve into all of this, but
and not to wax too philosophical, but I feel like a lot of that might stem from instant gratification and the fact that we can get basically anything we want. I can go to one of 4 grocery stores down the street and get whatever ingredients I need, and it's quicker and easier than me just trying to plan them out back. We also tried growing a bunch of tomatoes and peppers and everything, and almost nothing took. And then the tomato plants that did take, squirrels got them all.
It's funny, while Keith was talking about all that, I really wrote down the phrase capitalist vending machine. Because I think that's basically what we create this situation where you just go to the store and you push the button for what you want and it comes out. And you don't have to think about where it came from, how it got there, who did what to get it to you in that state.
Or how you're getting rid of it when you don't.
Or how you're getting rid of it afterwards.
Yep.
But I also think that most people I don't think it's because like on average people don't care about the environment, right? Because like environmentalism skyrocketed after 1969 because we went to the moon and took pictures of the Earth. And everybody's like, holy shit, that's the Earth. Like, that's the first time anybody saw that. And so when people saw that, they were like, it's beautiful, we should take care of it. And I think we've kind of gotten away from that, and we've gone to this capitalist vending machine where, like, we don't see the things, like you're saying. And I think education and, like, seeing the things would open more people up to caring a little bit more about stewardship of the land and that sort of thing.
Or we need to go to Mars and take a picture of Earth from even further away.
Yep.
Well, we also have the
pale
Carl
blue
Sagan's
dot.
pale blue dot.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty far away. But
See, now we just have to go outside the solar system and get
Yeah.
a picture of all the planet. No, that I won't.
but I think most
see
people,
the
if given
things.
if most people, if given the right perspective, will be like, oh, I get it. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I
Yeah,
think
I mean-
I don't know. Most people probably get it. It's just like
Yeah.
I think you have to create tangible connections, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big part of my work and my kind of philosophy is how can we create tangible connections to things, right? Because it's not so much like you could watch a documentary about, you know, food production, you could watch a documentary about climate change, and there's no real immediacy there. But when you go out in your backyard and, you know, you see the struggle of growing a tomato plant and you start to ask yourself, why is this hard to do? It changes your perspective a little bit, and maybe even kind of pushes you to find out, to be curious, to like troubleshoot, to go to people who maybe know a little bit more about this than you do, to ask them questions. Next thing you know, they're telling you from their years of experience, right? So it's that physical, tangible, and sensory connection that opens a lot of doors for people. That just, like, you know, seeing it is one sense, but, you know, if we can engage all of the senses, it's far more enriching.
They're between seeing and like experiencing.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
And like, not a lot of people have opportunities to do these things, right? They lead very busy lives, or they don't live in the right places, or they don't have access to their resources. So a big part of what we're trying to do, and hopefully eventually we're doing a lot more of, is creating those opportunities for people, you know?
well, I did open my other beer.
Excellent.
I'm drinking my last can of Piedmont, which I'm not usually a pale ale person, but this is lovely. And maybe you can speak to what makes this pale ale different from other pale ales. But I did want to mention, because we've been talking about a lot of the farms that you've been working with. I like that you specifically mentioned which farms the ingredients came from, which the malt's from here, Deer Creek Malt House, which we love those guys. That was an epic recording time with them.
I can imagine.
Yeah, there was a piñata.
Oh, fun. Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And the hops in here are from Murphy's Hop Yard and, of course, Fawn Hill Hop Yard, right by me. So can you
Yeah,
talk a little bit about Piedmont a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so thanks for kind of giving the lowdown on it a little bit. So Murphy's, I think that's the first time we worked with them. We really like their stuff, so we're working with them a lot more. We have a dry hopped Pilsner coming out with Triumph hops from their, or sorry, it's a Keller beer with Triumph hops from their hop yard. I think what makes that beer different from, I think, maybe other pale, and I don't know, you know, it's hard to say exactly what, but something interesting happens when you grow hops in different places. They change, right? And there's Four Star Farms in Massachusetts has done some really interesting kind of documentation on the hops that they grow there, with all of their kind of sensory analysis and chemical analysis of the hops that they're growing. You know, they're growing rhizomes, which are clones from, let's say, Chinook, for example. I don't know if that's, I think, or let's use Nugget. They're growing Nugget. This is a good example, which is probably a clone from a Nugget grown out in Yakima Valley, right? Same exact, like down to the DNA strands, identical plant, but the hop cones that are coming off that plant have different chemical compositions because of soil type, climate, rainfall, average amount of sunlight, right? All of these things that like influence a plant and its performance are changing the chemistry of those hop cones. And so this is Chinook and Centennial hops, again, like you mentioned, from Murphy's Hop Yard and Fawn Hill Hop Yard. But they're very different from what we kind of typically associate with Chinook and Centennial. They're not nearly as kind of dank and resinous. They have a little bit of like that citrusy pine kind of character, but again, it's like not in your face at all. And they have a really nice kind of currant, like red currant berry aroma that is really unique. That again, if I had purchased hops from, Yakima Chief, for example, to brew this beer with, I think it would have turned out significantly different. The other thing is we're using whole cone hops. So there's just a different kind of level of extraction that you're getting of flavonoids and alpha acids and other things from the hops when they're in their whole plant form versus when they're pelletized. I think pelletized hops, you get generally better extraction, but you also get a lot more bitterness and you get a lot more, kind of residual hop bite in the beer, which can sometimes take some time to settle out, especially with like a lot of hazies now, because they're releasing them so fast and they're not filtering them, obviously, or they wouldn't be hazy. You can end up with like a lot of hop bite in those beers when they're young. So again, working with like whole leaf hops, you don't get that at all. So it's a lot more kind of rounded, smooth, mellow hoppiness, which is really fun. We actually were just talking to Scott at Murphy's Hop Yard, and he's like, I'm thinking about pelletizing this year. And I was like, no, please don't. I was like, don't do that. And he's like, oh, really? Well, okay, maybe I won't. Tell me why. And I like gave him this whole spiel. So he's agreed that if we tell him what we want ahead of time, that he will allocate all of that and not pelletize it. And he's like, and if you get enough from me, I probably just won't do pelletization at all because it doesn't make sense. So yeah, we're very excited that like the things that we're working with locally are just so different from the things that you would typically kind of purchase and work with. And a lot of that is just like, these small growers, they can't really afford to pelletize. There isn't really like a cooperative model yet in place where like, there would be like a centralized processing facility. So they're just picking whole cone hops, drying them and packaging them, which is way more similar to how hops would have historically, been utilized in brewing. Pelletization, I don't know when it was introduced, but I'm going to guess that it's a fairly modern convention. I even remember when I started homebrewing 12 or 13 years ago, you could get any variety of hops that you wanted at the homebrew store in whole cone form. And then it was, only a couple years after that all of a sudden everything was pelletized, and then cryo hops. And then,
I was just going to say cryo hops.
Just like the trajectory has just followed the marijuana industry, like in complete parallel. And it's just like hash,
pretty much,
resin. And you're like, Jesus.
The similarities are striking.
Well, they're related.
Yeah.
And so I guess like the way that you process one, you can process the other. So I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, I haven't got out my grinder yet and put my hops in it. So yeah, I didn't say anything about the grain, and I will say that we love the grain that we're working with locally. Again, a big part of why we love it is because we get to see where it's made. We get to know the farmers, who it's coming from. Deer Creek is really interesting because it's floor malted and their kiln is, a little bit more rustic compared to modern day kilns. So, you just get a slightly kind of different character. You get a little I think more kind of toastedness, even in some of their lighter malts. Double Eagle is great. They're super consistent. They have a big drum kiln, like a big, like, I forget what the German manufacturer is. So their malting process, I would say, is a little bit more mechanized, but they're also working with 4 farms and helping them to convert basically commodity crops over to high quality barley, wheat, rye, and paying farmers double what the commodity prices are for those grains. So we love working with them because we know that everything we buy goes to support those farmers and like pay them a living wage and get them hopefully eventually, not just because of us, because we're very small, but like Trogs has come on board and is doing 2 of their beers exclusively with Double Eagle malt at this point. So, that's getting these farmers off of government subsidies and allowing them to grow higher quality ingredients and treat their soil better.
I was just going to say, yeah, and they'll treat the land better. Yeah.
This would be a good time to plug. We had, speaking of rustic things, there's a YouTube video back in the archives.
Oh boy.
Wayne and I did a video of Deer Creek Malt House.
Cool.
How long ago do you think that was? That was like video camera.
I want to say it was 2014 or 16.
It would have been 14 because we recorded there after that in 2015, and that's when I was up for a radio job in Minneapolis.
Yeah, we have a Deer Creek Malt House video on our YouTube channel that I've always been very proud of. You should go watch it.
Cool, I will.
Pretty old.
You
pretty
shot
old,
it on VHS, you said?
Might as well. No, we shot that on a decent DSLR. That's
Was it a DSLR?
Yeah, the first video we posted on YouTube was at South County.
Oh, South County,
and that was on
camera.
like a step above a toy camcorder.
It was like shaky cam.
It was bad.
There were like monsters and like witches.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Well,
And it
John
ends
was
with somebody
us.
standing in the corner.
I always had a good time with it. And we got to interview Scott, though, the farmer there, which,
super knowledgeable guy.
For so long, we'd always just focused on usually the brewer, and we always talked beer. And it's been really neat over the years of this podcast to get to talk to people that are involved in other aspects of the industry and even industry adjacent positions. Gives you a whole bigger understanding.
I have learned via doing this podcast that I'm actually very interested in agriculture, and I didn't think I would be. But like every time we talk about it, I'm like, really fascinating,
It's so true.
Yeah.
Should we play a game?
I was gonna say, I think it might be time to play a game.
We down to clown.
Right.
So that's what's happening.
Always.
Let's play a game.
Did he say something about a clown?
Down to clown.
Down
what
to
I said.
clown.
That's what I said. I debated asking for a bathroom break before the game because I haven't drank beer in the podcast in a while, but I think I'm going to power through.
Or I could go get a glass of wine.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. You want to take a break?
Anyway, you still don't have a beverage.
Yeah, go get yourself a drink before we
No.
play the game.
All right, I'll be right back.
All right, me too.
Yeah, Rich just comes in with a whole ass friggin' pizza. And
bag of weird Doritos.
Jalapeno pineapple Doritos.
Oh, those sound good, but also probably terrible.
There is milk in them.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense in a way.
The Thai chili ones are vegan. And
Oh,
they
cool.
are really friggin' good.
Are Oreos still considered vegan?
Yeah. Regular Oreos.
Right, yeah, none of the flavored ones.
Well, no, many of the flavored ones are, but now they have like those cakey ones. Those aren't
Oh,
vegan.
yeah.
And there was another one that wasn't vegan, but most of the special flavor ones actually are. I feel like the world of threads will like this.
The world of threads.
There's like a few people that I regularly talk to on there. And the one guy is actually he's like Lancaster County area or something because
That's cool.
yeah. And then sometimes they show me things that I'm like, why would I even care about this?
Okay.
That sounds like the
I was
internet
just
in a
telling
nutshell.
Dan that Rich picked up pineapple jalapeno Doritos.
I didn't
That's
know
a
that was
thing?
a thing. Yeah, that's a
Right?
thing.
Now that I know it's a thing, I kind of want to look for them.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I will have to try at least one, but I said the Thai chili Doritos are my personal favorite. I don't know what you guys think.
I've had like Cool Ranch and Original. I don't think
that's
I've
basically
ventured
for
very
me.
far.
Yeah, the last time I've had Doritos, I don't remember the last time I had a Dorito out of a bag, but I eat Doritos Locos Tacos pretty often.
I've had the Whopper Doritos also.
Wait,
there's Whopper
Doritos?
Yeah, they're only in the UK though.
When did you go to the UK? No, I know.
I didn't. I ordered them on the internet.
I have to say that's very weird. Wait, like Whoppers, like the candy or like the burger?
The burger.
I figured the burger. The candy would be strange.
So I have to say that I think that's very weird that you could only get it in the UK because I didn't realize, number one, that Burger King, maybe because it has a monarch in its title, that's why they like it so much. But you would think that's a very like specific flavor to the American palate.
Well, and I will tell you, the UK Doritos are very healthy tasting compared to American Doritos, which I don't think surprises anyone. But
yeah, they're like no MSG, no corn, no modified soybean oil.
But the prominent flavor was lettuce.
Interesting.
Ew.
I mean, I wasn't sad about it, but I don't think we've opened the second bag.
But like Burger King lettuce is like sad lettuce.
Sad lettuce.
No, but you don't understand. I've been a vegetarian for almost 20 years. So the fact that I can now eat a Whopper again, like Impossible Whopper, that is like my fast food guilty pleasure. So
I'm in the same camp. We had out of desperation to stop and get food. We're vegetarian. And it was like, what is there? And it's just like one thing. You know, when you're out in like the middle of Pennsylvania, it's after like 6 o'clock on a weekday. And it's just like, there's one place, maybe two, Taco Bell, but like
Sheets, Western Pennsylvania. There's lots of Sheets.
Yeah,
we do. My wife's vegan. We do Taco Bell pretty often.
I have a weird thing against gas station food.
Oh, you're not from Pennsylvania. We don't call it gas station food.
Not Wawa or Sheets.
Yeah,
that's
Wawa
different.
and Sheets are a little more
That's not
legit.
gas station food.
Like walk into the store and I like smell gasoline on my hands. Like I don't want to eat anything.
I would say that Wawa and Sheets is like a step above gas station food, but a step below fast food. It's like in that like gray area between the two.
That's fair. It's pretty much just a necessary evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love a Wawa hoagie though. I'm not gonna lie.
It can be above fast food depending on what and how you order it.
True.
Because you can get a pretty healthy fast food option.
So if you order it in a British accent, it's above.
Oh, they're British. We can't put corn in this.
We always come back to every so many episodes come back to talking about Wawa and Sheets food. It just happens. It just always comes back.
I love that it comes on the tail end of like a really like deep conversation about agriculture and you know.
Yeah, then we go right back into the capitalist vending machine.
So
I'm
funny.
surprised it took this long for us to get on a tangent like this. Not gonna lie.
True.
All right, Wayne, you're up.
I mean, I'm ready if we're ready to play a game. I think.
Hit me.
Let's do it. Cheers, the internet, and welcome to Happy Fun Time Games, the podcast trivia segment that is quite the fungus magnet. Today, we are playing just a classic, original flavor, libation or fabrication. So for the uninitiated, this is a game in which I will give you the name of something, and you have to tell me if that thing is a real beer that exists or if I just made it up. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, classic Happy Fun Time game. So let's get started and begin, as we almost always do, to my left with Dan, our first beer of the game. Tell me, is this real or fake? This beer is called This Product Is Not Real. Nothing is real.
Oh, sure. Let's go with... You know what? I'm going to lean into it. I believe it's not real. It's fake.
All right. Dan is saying that is fake. Steph, what do you think?
Say the name one more time.
This product is not real. Nothing is real.
I'm going to say it's real.
Saying it is real. We've got a fake. We've got a real. Keith, what are you going to do?
I'm going to say it's real, and I'm going to say that it's from a brewery in New York. But
Evil Twin.
that sounds like an Evil Twin beer.
Specifically Evil Twin. I love when people call their shots. So Steph and Keith saying it's real. Keith calling a shot. Dan saying it's fake. Dan is correct.
All
This one
right.
is fake.
Now,
It is
did
not
Wayne
real.
come up? Here's the follow-up. Was it Wayne?
Well,
or was
okay.
it chat? What is that thing called?
Oh,
ChatGPT
Bard.
or
I did go
Bard.
to Bard. I went to Google's
Bard.
Bard today, and you know what? I'm sorry. I don't know why everyone thinks AI is going to take over the world. Every
No.
time I've interacted with it, I've been like, "What? Seriously?"
No.
I-
And there was a thing I read recently that ChatGPT specifically is now more inaccurate for like simple mathematical equations.
I saw
Yeah,
that.
it's like 98%
Yeah.
wrong and 2% right.
I went onto Bard, which I haven't gone on in a while. I signed up for the Bard. I signed up for the waiting list, and then I got added like 10 minutes later. Heck of a waiting list.
You waited.
I waited. But I went on today because I was like, let me see if I can get some inspiration for the game. And like 5 times it was like, I'm not programmed to answer that question.
Weird.
And I'm like, what? What is happening?
That's no fun.
Anyway,
fun.
this wasn't AI. It's not a beer, as the name strongly suggests, but it is, however, the somewhat paradoxical tagline of an artist that I follow on Instagram who goes by the sublimely punicle name of Obvious Plant and makes satirical products such as acquaintance bracelets and the recent Barbie Chewables, which is a doll coated in 90s style chewable kids vitamins.
What's the name of this one?
Obvious Plant. You should follow them on Instagram. Amazing. And the back of every one of their products says, "This product is not real. Nothing is real." So that is not a beer. Moving on to our second beer of the game, and Steph is going to guess first on this one. This one is called Imperial Something Came for You in the Mail Today.
No, I actually did get beer in the mail today. Real.
Saying that is real. Keith, what do you think?
Dan followed them before.
I don't know anymore. Ugh.
I don't know anymore.
What is reality?
I'm just gonna say real.
Saying that
All
is
things
real.
are possible.
That's right. Anything is possible if you believe. Any pizza is a personal pan pizza if you believe in yourself. Dan.
This is true.
I want to do a Zombie Rhombus.
Yeah, no, that was the first thing I
they're
saw.
An amazing account. Everybody should follow Obvious Plant. I'm just saying. Amazing artist. Just incredible.
Wait, what was the name of this one again? I'm sorry.
This is Imperial Something Came for You in the Mail Today.
Yeah, let's go real.
Oh, everybody's saying real on this one, and everyone is correct.
Wow.
This is, in fact, a real beer. It is an 11% ABV Imperial Porter made with hazelnuts and almonds from Wiley Roots Brewing in Greeley, Colorado. It is a variation of the more succinctly monikered and less imperial Something Came in the Mail Today, which is a 7% porter. The name, if you are curious, stems from a briefly viral and mildly funny YouTube video from the carefree days of 2015. You can look it up if you want. It's not really worth commenting on beyond that.
Oh, Weldworks is in Greeley. I was trying to think of what brewery in that part of Colorado I was at, because I didn't recognize the name of that brewery.
Well, it's not this one. Moving swiftly on to what is now our penultimate beer of
That
the
was
game.
too fast.
I know. This is a pretty quick one. I should have done more, but I only did 4. We've come to Keith to guess first on this one. Our next beer, is this real or is it fake? This one is called Julius Squeezer IPA.
It's gotta be real.
Saying it's gotta be real. Dan, what do you think?
I'm going real as well.
And also going real. Finally, Steph.
I mean, I know you're the king of puns, but how can that not be real? I'm going to say real.
All right, everybody's saying real, and it is, of course, real. It is really real. Of course, somebody already thought of that pun. This is a 6.6% ABV Hazy Boy from Elmhurst Brewing in Illinois. Elmhurst, Illinois. In fact, hitting all the right New Englandy notes, they describe it as a cloudy, pale hop bomb, a smooth, fruity IPA with almost no bitterness and dominated by apricot, peach, mango, and grapefruit. Not much to say interesting on that beer, but Julius Squeezer IPA is in fact a really real
Squeezer,
beer.
I barely know her.
Boo.
That was a pretty good one. So we have come to our final beer of the game. So this is, of course, the point in the process where we add up the points to see where everyone is standing, to see who's got a handicap and who is running away with victory. We have tied with 2 points apiece, Steph and Keith. Not a bad showing, but just above that level, going into the fast foodosphere, is Dan.
That's what I aim for.
A perfect score of 3 points. So we're going to have Dan guess first,
Shit.
so that you both get to hear what he says before you make your guess
Guests.
on this. Guests on this final beer of the game. It's been a while since I've had a buzz on when I've done Happy Hours.
Wait, didn't you have one beer?
I've had like 1.5, but they're like 9% beer.
Oh,
That's fair.
Yeah. All right, our final beer of the game. Dan, tell me, is this real or is it fake? This is Flamingos and Unicorns Save the World.
Oh, man. Oh, I like that name. I'm going to say fake, though.
Okay, Dan going fake on that one. Steph, what do you think?
I'm going to say real, and I'm going to say that it's Pipeworks beer.
Real and calling the shot of Pipeworks. And finally, Keith.
I'm going to say real because it's the only chance that I have to tie with Dan.
Strategically, yes, you should say real, and that is the incorrect answer because
Dan
this
wins.
one is, in fact, fake. It's not a beer, but maybe a prescient prophecy. There has long been a strange undercurrent of unicorns in the beer world, and lately I have noticed an insurgency, a quiet insurgency of flamingos as well. The one is mythical, both are pretty fabulous, and I'm happy to call them my saviors. Stats for you. If you look up the word flamingo on Untappd, you get 1,059 beer results. If you look up the word unicorn, you get 2,281 beer results. Lots of them out there. But to put it in context, if you look up cat, you get 19,199 results. 19,199 beers on Untappd with the word cat in the name.
So is it just the word cat, or is it the letters C-A-T in that order appear within a word?
Ooh. Because you could have, like, catch something.
Catch,
good
category.
Or if somebody spells it catsup.
That's a good question. I don't know. But doing the research today for this inspired me to maybe invent a new game where, like, we pick a word and then plug it in Untappd and try to guess how many beers have that word in the name.
Oh, my God.
I like
and whoever
that.
gets closest gets, like, a point. I think it's a
Closest
good idea.
without
New
getting
game.
over.
New game.
Or you could do it where you pick a word to see if there are no results.
Oh, to see if you
Is
can
that
find a word
even
has
possible?
nothing.
I don't know. We
I
used
mean,
to
it would
play
have-
this game when Google was very nascent. We'd be like, put in a Google search and try to get the fewest results. I mean, you can't do it now, but it's
Interesting.
fun.
Interesting. We'd have to say
Which
some
of
rules, like
these
it has
has-
to be a real word.
Yeah, or
Yes,
maybe multiple choice, where you're like, which one of these has the least number of results on Untappd?
Okay.
Because I feel like arbitrarily guessing a number is like, that's like when we used to play that rare beer game where you'd make us guess how much it was up for
God.
auction for or whatever.
Hey, at least it wasn't palindromes.
The container was up for auction.
Yeah, the container, not the contents inside,
The
because that would be
contents are
illegal.
not included in the price.
But this is the game we
Okay,
are
so
playing
Dan
today.
won.
The game we are playing today is Libation or Fabrication. Dan has 4 points. Steph has 2 points. Keith has 2 points. So Dan is today's big winner. Thank you all for playing.
Woo.
No prize for winning, except bragging rights. No punishment for losing because we are on Zoom at the moment and we can't make you do anything because we are not in person.
Dan just got his prize.
Yeah. Moo has joined the call. Moo has joined the phone call. But this is, of course, the part of the podcast where we must shout out to our most generous patrons on Patreon. We would like to thank the following individuals with the utmost sincerity we can muster, beginning with Jen McDonald.
I'm driving me lorry and I got the trots. Moo hit that one.
Eric Dixon. Oh, sure. Dana.
Your business card is nice and thick.
James Lamberg.
The one and only, that's no baloney.
Oh, classic. Chris Mahoney.
Dan, you loser.
Wrong.
Whoa, Sean Sullivan.
I don't have a beer.
Brian Mills.
Beer is every place.
That was a good one. Jill Chivers.
I love all people.
Oh, Joe Mansell.
And it's super legal.
I'm sorry, Joe. I didn't say the one and only that's no baloney, Joe Mansell.
Professional metal drummer.
All Bart. And finally, Ben Mangle.
It's got a hair of Dutch.
Hera Dutch.
Hera
How
Dutch.
appropriate from Deer Creek Malthouse. Hera Dutch. If you want to find out how you get on this list and get all the other cool behind-the-scenes perks as well as the warm, fuzzy feelings that come along with being a Patreon of Beer Busters Podcast, go to patreon.com/beerbusters. And for now, help us pay our tab by listening to these commercials.
Say, Yvonne, remember when I said I'd have to send away to NASA to calculate your bar tab?
Oh, yeah. We all had a good laugh, Mo.
The results came back today. You owe me $70 billion.
Cheers to you out there in Beer Busters land. I want to tell you about the good people at Brooklyn Brew Shop. They've been empowering the kitchen curious since 2009. Their beer making kits are compact, attractive, and easy to use, keeping the most space-strapped brewers in mind. You get to use the same ingredients at home as world-class craft breweries. There's no extract, no sugar powders, just grain, hops, yeast, and depending on the beer, some other fun and exotic spices. And they also have a new series called Farm Steady, which is do-it-yourself food kits like cheese, baking, fermentation, foraging, and more. And this encourages people to revel in the kitchen by savoring foods they would never imagine making at home, like bagels and cream cheese or soft pretzels with beer cheese, Italian cheeses, and kraut as well. And they even have hard cider, wine, and sparkling wine kits too. Moo's excited about it too. Each kit comes with everything you need to make your professional quality beer at home. And if you visit bit.ly/beerbustersbrooklyn, you get to enjoy fast and free shipping on orders over $59. That is bit.ly/beerbustersbrooklyn for free and fast shipping on orders over $59 from Brooklyn Brew Shop.
So, Keith, as we get to the last part here and we wrap up, is there anything else that we didn't talk about yet that you want to make sure we talk about? Is there any upcoming releases or events that you want to make sure you plug?
No, I don't think so. I mean, just stay tuned. If you don't follow us on Instagram, do. That's where we keep in touch with everybody. So new releases are being sprinkled out all the time. We're doing the Fawn Hill Hop Yard second and fourth Saturdays of every month. 1 year anniversary party soon. Be a fun one. TBD sometime in October.
Yeah.
So know that. And yeah, hopefully we are coming to a tap room somewhere soon. Can't promise it's near you, but it'll be near us.
I
like
love that. Oh, man. You want our beer, you come to us. But there are many options if people want to get your beer. You guys are at quite a number of farmers markets, the beer gardens and pop-ups. You guys are really good at posting on your social media. So
yeah, you can find us around Philadelphia, Southern Chester County, a little bit of Lancaster. Just kind of as far as we've spread our wings. But that's probably the farthest we ever will spread them.
I mean, there's something to be said for that, especially since you're using, local ingredients and stuff that's grown on the farm there. It makes sense to not have as wide a distribution footprint.
Well, someone asked for our stuff up in Boston, and because that's where, I have a background. But, they reached out to their distributor that they buy. It was a craft beer store. They reached out to the distributor and said, hey, can you get these guys? And he was like, how do you want me to sell Pennsylvania terroir in Massachusetts? I was like, hey, that's a good point, right? Like,
hey, that's a good point.
So we'll see.
Yeah,
maybe someday.
You mentioned the Instagram. What is the Instagram for those who would like to follow?
Succession_fermentory.
Beautiful. Short, sweet, and to the point. Love it.
Yeah, and that's TORY.
Yes.
Correct.
Fermentory.
Yes.
Because I always wanted to be an E in my head.
You know what? I think I do too. Is that?
Yeah.
Can you spell
I think
both?
Fermentory looks cooler written down and is correct.
Can you?
But I always
I
want
think you want to
both
do it ERY
ways?
because fermentary form.
Maybe
is
that's
ERY.
why, because that was the first
Are they
place I
ERY?
ever
Okay.
saw with fermentory in the name.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a neologism, so I don't know if there is a correct spelling.
Yeah,
but
it's like cidery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've
I
ever
had a
heard
hard
the
time
word.
spelling creperie today. I don't know why.
Can you spell neologism? Is that what you said?
Neologism.
Neologistology.
That's a real good word.
I mean, that's probably spelled pretty phonetically when you think.
Neologism, yeah.
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 The longer the word, the easier it is to spell sometimes.
Yeah.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Or if it comes from Latin.
Well, yeah, that too. Well, while you are following along with Succession Fermentory, make sure you check us out too. We are at Beer Busters on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Threads. Don't forget Threads.
And YouTube.
And YouTube, I know. I realized earlier when I was writing it out that like the order is a little bit off, but I kind of like the emphasis on YouTube later because that was strictly video and everything else can just be like a hodgepodge. But
well, and
yeah.
I guess we're Beer Busters podcast on YouTube, right?
Oh,
We
yeah,
are,
that
yes.
too. Yeah, yeah.
Because there is another channel called Beer Busters.
Yes. We are also Beer Busters Podcast on Facebook. You can also go to beerbusterspodcast.com where you can also look at the shop tab. You can add /shop to it. Basically, just find the merch. Wayne did a lot of work on these really cool designs, and I think they need to be more widespread. I don't even care if I care if we make money off it, but like Wayne's designs are really cool, and you should check them out, and you should buy them and wear them because he is insanely talented, and I'm jealous.
When did this become heat praise on me? I like it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just don't get used to it.
Okay.
Maybe
I was
you'll
gonna
be
say-
inspired to design something new now after all that praise.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, maybe. I was going to say anywhere that we have an account that has the word podcast in it, it's because Beer Busters already
No,
exists
that's
on
true.
that
Yeah,
platform.
it had to be. It had to be. And there's Patreon. Patreon, it's just Beer Busters, not Beer Busters Podcast, just patreon.com/beerbusters. As little as $1 a month can get you access to all the cool behind-the-scenes stuff, the punishment videos, we talked about earlier. Lots of cool stuff. And we're still... Oh, and Happy Hour is, I guess, what we're calling it now. It was Last Call, kind of turned into Happy Hour. But there's extra, as the kids say, content for you to check out.
Yes, as the kids say.
As the kids say, yes.
Because we are not the kids.
No, I haven't. No, I've felt like I was 100 since I was 15. All that to say, Keith, thank you so much for joining us, man. This was great.
Hey, thanks for having me. This was really fun, and I'm gonna order this Pilsner T-shirt now.
Oh,
sweet.
you didn't have to
Nice.
do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's very cool. I like it a lot.
See, aren't Wayne's
Cool.
designs cool? And I promise we're
Thank
not paying
you.
you to say this, but the check will be in the mail. Don't worry.
Oh, shit.
love it.
What?
When I was editing the menu on our website earlier, I deleted the shop link and not the media resources link.
Oh, no.
I got to fix our website real quick.
Well, by the time this airs, it's going to be back. So don't worry. If you're listening to this and you
If
think,
Keith
yep.
Keith found it, you can find it too.
Yes, that is also true. Man.
And purchase.
Aw, thank you.
Thank you.
Aw. See, more testament to Wayne's designs. Oh, that's awesome. This has been so much fun, and it pains me to say that unfortunately this brings us to the end of another episode of Beer Busters. I can't wait to try some of your beers. I don't know how I haven't yet. I apologize I didn't have any in time for the episode, but it is certainly on the radar, and I cannot wait to try them.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll make sure to get you some.
Oh, well, thank you.
I recommend the smoked lager.
Oh, I do like
Very
a good
much.
smoked lager. Oh, man. Well, I also have to say thank you for listening to this out in podcast land. If you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice, that'd be very much appreciated. And do that for all the shows you listen to. I'm Dan Baker, joined by my co-host and brewologist,
Steph Hefner.
and the currently fixing our website.
Wayne Baker.
We'll see you next time.
Whatever you do, don't pelletize.